Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just waiting for everybody to get logged in, and then we'll begin our topic of conversation today. Brian, you got the waiting room watched?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started now, and I'm sure we'll have more people that are joining us. This has become, so far, the highest registration we've had on any of our calls over the last couple of months. So obviously a hot topic. I'm Colleen Bracci with Remax Realty Group. My partner Brian Timmons is also on the call with us today. And we have a special guest from the city of Rochester, the code compliance unit, and he is a senior code enforcement officer, and his name is Dan Arena. And today he's going to be talking to us about the C of O policies, especially pertaining to COVID. So we're gonna give Dan the show and get this ball going, get this ball rolling. Thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Good morning. So this morning we'll be talking about the COVID policies and the different types of inspections and how we are treating each inspection and what we are doing differently for each one. I could share screen right now, and if you want to give me permissions.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to, oh, there we go, share screen. Nope, it's just telling me to share mine. Brian, how do I share screen for him? I'm going to make you a co-host. I think you can share your screen if I make you a co-host. So
Yes.
You're getting the power, Dan.
Okay.
All right. Should be able to do that now, I hope.
Okay. Can you?
Huh. Advanced sharing up. Oh, here we go. There we go. We got it. Yay. Good job.
Okay. So here is the policy we'll go through. Obviously, because of COVID-19, we had to change our different policies with each different type of inspection, and they're a little bit different depending on the type of inspections. So new construction, inspection staff may enter a new construction site or area to perform inspections, and we'll just follow through with the bullets here. There are no more than one adult accompanying an inspector on the present in the unit. Both the inspector and the person's accompanying them must be wearing face mask coverings. If the customer does not have a mask, then the inspector will provide one. These appointments will be done as fast as possible. You know, we really want to get in and out in less than an hour of these, and where reasonable compliance may be achieved through video inspections. So a lot of times if we have a couple little items that we need to look at, or they want an inspection on a certain area and we're very familiar with the site, we'll do a Zoom call like we're doing right now, and we'll record that call and we'll put it into our record retention for that item or items that we are inspecting. It works for re-inspections pretty well, where we're going through and when we're familiar with the project. You know, and a lot of times we'll start from the outside and work our way in just so that we know we're at that location. Let's go on to complaints. Exterior complaints can be handled in the same manner as they always have been, where an inspector is performed without the inspector being accompanied by a complainant. Any necessary interaction with the caller can be accomplished via phone. So we can just go to the property. If you had a complaint on the exterior, we'll go to the property, we get our permissions, and we'll walk around the area without having any contact with anybody. Now, interior is different on the other hand. So interior, upon receiving a interior complaint, city staff will follow the steps of the complaint policy. Once the complaint policy has been followed, the necessary inspection is is to be scheduled, the following criteria must be met in order for the inspection to be performed. These items will be covered by support staff as they schedule the appointment with the resident. So support staff will contact the caller if they are feeling sick or have a fever or being either treated for COVID or under quarantine. If any of these answers are yes, the appointment will not be scheduled. Upon confirmation of the appointment, the inspector will ask the same series of questions. Appointments will be scheduled for health and safety related concerns. So we're going in really just for health and safety stuff for our complaints at this time. During any necessary interior inspection, there shall be no more than one adult accompanying the inspector. An expectation will be made that one adult resident and one owner agent rep. So as both answer the same series of questions related to COVID-19 previously answered by the tenant, and all are wearing face masks and coverings and practicing social distancing. Both the inspector and complainant must be wearing masks at all times during the inspection. If the customer does not pose a mask, the inspector will provide one. The inspection will be efficiently performed and focus on health and safety related issues expressed by the concerned complainant. In the course of performing the interior inspection, there is a need to open a window, turn on a light, flush a toilet, plug something into an outlet, test a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector. Each of those activities will be performed by the owner, occupant, or agent. The inspector will simply verify the results, but not be touching those surfaces. So during the complaints, we really want to be hands off and kind of have the tenant or property manager or agent, whoever's letting us through, be the one to perform any of these tasks. Would you guys like to ask questions after each one, or do you just want to wait till then?
Why don't we open it up to questions,
Sure.
just so everybody remembers as we go along here. Does anybody have any questions about what we've heard so far? Okay, I guess we're headed to the next part.
Okay. So certificate of occupancy, our CVO program inspections present the most complicated and challenging for this purpose. This is due to extensive review of the entire structure and premises, and because the applicable lead testing. This protocol is designed to reasonably maximize our ability to ensure the safe and habitability housing while ensuring the safety of both staff and public, and without compromising the integrity of our lead ordinance. Upon confirmation of any necessary inspection appointment, the inspector will ask the owner or agent if they are feeling sick, have a fever, or being treated for COVID or under quarantine. If any of the answers are yes, the appointment will not be conducted. 1 and 2 family structures. Full exterior inspection will be performed in the code compliant and no previously lead history. An affidavit can be submitted and signed off on both the occupants and owner agent to satisfy the interior portion of the inspection. This is probably one of the biggest ones because when we're doing it, we're getting a sign off so we don't have to do an initial interior on it. We'll get the affidavit in lieu of an interior inspection due to COVID. Where there is a Monroe County Department of Health lead history, the interior must be inspected. So if there's a Monroe County health history, that will void out any opportunity for an affidavit for the interior inspection. During any necessary interior inspection, there should be no more than one adult accompanying the inspector. The exception can be made for one adult resident and one owner agent rep, so as the resident answers the same series of questions related to COVID-19 previously answered by the owner agent, and all wearing face masks, coverings, and practicing social distancing. Both the inspector and customer must be wearing face mask coverings at all times during the inspection. If the customer does not possess either, an inspector will provide a mask. In the course of performing an interior inspection, If there is a need to open a window, turn on the light, flush it, or turn on water, flush a toilet, turn on a light, light switch, plug something in an outlet, open a door, test a smoke detector, carbon monoxide alarm. Each of these activities will be performed by the owner occupant agent. The inspector will simply verify the results. Will not be touching those surfaces. Where a dust wipe is required, it shall be performed separately from the initial inspection unless the subject unit is vacant at the time permits.
Let me ask a quick question, if you don't mind me interrupting here. So in regards to the affidavit, so basically a landlord can go in if there's no health history or health department history as far as leg goes on the property. A landlord can go up to his tenant and say, here, sign this affidavit that states there's nothing wrong with the interior of the house, and then you're good to go?
Or in lieu of the interior inspection, you can get an affidavit. But this is not going to be, we're not going to accept an affidavit for a property that has, say, been in code enforcement with previous interior violations, or has been an ongoing case that, all of a sudden people think they can immediately apply for an affidavit where they can't. This is based on people who are, and folks who are affected immediately at the time of COVID. So it's not like, okay, you had an open case for 2 years, you never let an inspector in, and then you're going to apply to get the affidavit. It's for folks that are just kind of going through it towards the beginning of COVID.
Is there an affidavit form that the city provides that needs
Yeah,
to be?
we mailed them all out. So if they were one of the cases that were able to get the affidavit, we did mail them out. So
Okay.
Does
it need to be notarized, or is it just simple signatures?
It's simple signatures as of right now. We're in good faith, making sure we're not going to request and notarize statement for each person.
All right. I know we have, it looks like we have another page and a half to go. Let me just open it up to people and see if anybody else has any questions before we proceed further. Sure. Anybody got anything about the single family units?
Yes, please. I just have a question because I'm dealing with one right now. It's a vacant home. So are you saying that the seller can sign an affidavit and say everything's fine inside? Because we're requiring him to have a C of O.
The vacants, really, there's the vacants that you can go into. This is more about the interior of occupied, where you're going into a vacant. It's kind of like business as usual. We most certainly can get in and do a full inspection and just practice our social distancing and our safety precautions to be able to get our interior inspections.
Okay, so when we're asking for the seller to supply the C of O, so you'll be going inside and outside on a vacant home, is that correct in the city?
Correct. The vacants will be, business, pretty much business as usual.
As usual?
Yeah, they're a lot easier to get in. Most of the time, if they're without furniture or anything inside, it's a much faster inspection than an occupied unit with more things going on. Vacants are, it's a good time to inspect vacant units, I'll tell you that.
Okay, one last question. Do you guys inspect the roof, like if it's on cedar shakes or if it has multiple layers?
If we see something that's very obvious where we can tell that there are many, many layers and that it's not code compliant, we can make that assessment. But we are doing just a visual inspection, and we are, going on the roof. We're not pulling back layers. We're not actually going to be able to identify and dig deeper into seeing how many layers of roofing shingles there actually are. With a visual inspection, we're limited to exactly what we can see. Most of the time, we cannot visually say, hey, look, you have more than 2 layers. It's not as simple as, seeing it from the edge. The drip line can hide it. If someone did a install the drip line around the edge, you're not going to be able to see more than 1 layer that you're going to be able to see, unless you're in the attic and you see cedar shakes, or you have a lot of roofs that are deteriorated and are peeling off, and you can actually identify that there are more than 2 layers. So it's a little bit difficult to say, hey, you definitely have more than 2 layers when there's no obvious signs.
Okay, because you can't go over cedar shakes anymore, correct, or no?
Well, you're not going to get right now, you're not going to get like an initial one that has cedar shakes and then do a re-roof. You're going to have to do put a new facing on and then do your whole new roof as a full tear off when you have the cedar.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have a quick question from somebody in the chat asking if you could provide a link to the form, the affidavit form that somebody may need for the waiver.
Yes, and all the inspectors will be able to have that. So normally the inspector will have the affidavit and be able to send that. I'm not 100% sure if it's on the city's website. We can check into that. But if they have one specific house, they most certainly can get a hold of that inspector that's the task to that property and get that sent to them via the inspector. I'm not too sure if each one has it, but definitely can get a hold of me. I can send that as well, and then see if the property that is in question does qualify for it.
Okay, they're also asking if there's any way that we could get a copy of what you are sharing on your screen. Would you be able to email me that document and I could send it out? Great.
Sure can. Yep. Any other questions, or should we move on to multiple?
I think we can proceed forward. That'd be great.
Okay. Multiple dwellings. A full inspection of the exterior and interior common areas will be performed in code compliance. A random sampling of 40% of total units will be inspected for the purpose of unit selection. They must include any vacant unit if present, and the additional occupant units must be selected randomly by the inspector upon arrival and not prior to deployment. There will be a focus on equal distribution of units on each level of the structure. The overall total number of units that will be inspected based on those 40% units not containing any visible interior deteriorated paint, fire safety, or other hazardous violations. If any of the following violations are identified in the unit inspected, then all units will be required an inspection, such as interior deteriorated paint, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms not working, missing second means of egress, and other hazardous conditions. For the units not inspected, the owner agent shall apply for an affidavit attesting to the condition of those units. Any previously cited interior violations may be abated via video evidence or compliance upon inspection verification. Where a dust wipe test is required, it shall be performed separately from the initial inspection.
Quick question on that, Dan.
Yep.
Who performs the dust wipe? Would that be the inspector too, or do they bring in a third party?
We will perform a dust wipe where a unit has not been cited for interior deteriorated paint.
Okay.
A unit was cited for interior deteriorated paint, then a third party will do the dust wipe.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for multiples. Anything on there? Okay, we'll move on to referrals. The majority of our referrals come from fire department, and those situations in neighborhood business and development will only be following up on those where the hazardous situation remaining upon Rochester Fire Department existing in the unit where the neighborhood business development has been provided. A direct contact with the occupant as part of a referral in situations that warrants an interior inspection. The protocols above for interior complaints must be followed. Any and all of these other referrals from outside agencies must encourage the resident to come through the complaint process. So if we got called for, RFD got called out to a fire in a kitchen, and it comes through, our concerns are that, there could be possible damage and lighting and electrical and other structural issues. we will open a case based on a referral and try to get in to make sure that the work is done. We also go by the RFD referrals and base our inspections on what their referral will say. So a lot of times they'll say it's constant, they'll say where the fire was, and that's where we're mostly focused. And, you know, it's the same as the other inspections. We do want to get in as quickly as possible and identify the issues if there are any. Rehab grant or home buyer inspections. For our rehab grant and home buyer program, inspections will follow the same applicable protocols as the interior complaint inspections. Support staff will ask the person of color if they're feeling sick, have a fever, or being treated for COVID or under quarantine. If any of these answers are yes, then appointments will not be scheduled. There shall be no more than one adult on an inspection in a unit while the inspection is being performed. Both the inspector and the customer must be wearing face mask coverings at all times. The customer does not possess one, the inspector will provide one. In the course of performing the interior inspection, if there is a need to open a window, turn on water, flush a toilet, turn a light switch, plug something in an outlet, open a door, test a smoke or carbon monoxide alarm, each of those activities will be performed by the occupant owner agent. The inspector will simply verify the results, will not be touching any surfaces. Inspection will be efficiently performed and focus on the grant subject areas.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody have any questions about COVID and how it relates to the C of O inspections? All right, let's move on to the meat and potatoes about how to get a C of O and what all the policies are in regards to that.
Let me stop sharing this and then I'll pull up the next one.
While you are looking for that, Dan, I got a quick question. You know, we've got the eviction laws in place now, and COVID is restricting landlords from removing tenants who are disastrous to properties or are not paying rents or whatever. In the case of your C of O expired 3 months ago and your tenant's not cooperating about letting you in, what options does the landlord have, you know, so that he doesn't get fined for not having a C of O on the property?
Well, we will obviously work with the landlords regarding these situations where we're not able to get in, and we know that we're not able to get in. As long as there's good communication, then the fines will be acquired as long as we're going through. But we'll also want kind of verification from a tenant. So an inspector will, you know, go out, they may call the tenant, they'll ask these questions, knock on a door, and just kind of get this information to kind of confirm on what that landlord is saying is true. So, you know, we're not going to get really involved in that legal process of eviction and that type of stuff by any means, because it's all going to be on the attorneys on that. And, you know, there's been a lot of confusion which way everything's kind of going to go. So we, you know, if they're not 100%, we're definitely not, you know, so we're not comfortable saying it's going to go this way or that way regarding how evictions are going to be working at this time. So what I have here is the generic portion of certificate occupancies, and this is all found on the city charter on the City of Rochester site. If you just went to cityofrochester.gov and you looked up city code in the search bar, you would find links to chapter 90 and 39 and all the other chapters that the city has. So you can look through all of them and you know, be efficient in knowing all these. So all this information is available on the city's website. But we'll go through the C of O process more than anything. So let's start with Chapter 90-16, which is certificate of occupancy is required in buildings where a transfer of title of any two-family dwelling where a C of O has not been issued within the past 2 years, a reoccupancy of a building where a dwelling unit has been completely vacant for over the 2 months unless a C of O has been issued within the past year, a change of occupancy or use, expiration and termination of a valid C of O, a change of occupancy where a one-family dwelling is no longer occupied by the owner or spouse, child, sibling, or parent of the owner. So then we're kind of, when we touched on that last one, E, we talk about where you could get a waiver and you wouldn't need a certificate of occupancy for a 1 or 2 family. And these areas that are acceptable is in a settlement of an estate, in lieu of a foreclosure, by appointment by a court-appointed referee, by a trustee in a bankruptcy, or selling matters of credit pursuant to a judicial sale, when a city forecloses or county forecloses between a husband and a wife, a former owner, the company reorganizes by a corporation and its shareholders to HUD, by a person who retains the life, use, or interest in the property. So now we're talking about like exemption on the interior of a unit with the Section 8. So owners of a 1 or 2 family dwelling occupied by a Section 8 tenant and inspected by RHA Housing Authority can apply for a waiver for the interior inspection of the unit in question during the C of O process. In order to secure the waiver, the owner must apply for a C of O and have an exterior and any interior areas of the structure not occupied by the Section 8 tenant inspected. Complete a waiver form submitted by RHA inspection report has been indicated that past unit and inspection within the previous year where no interior deteriorated paint was identified.
I'm sorry, I had some technical difficulties there, so I'm not sure if you already went through this or not, but so you're saying that if there's a Section 8 tenant in place and Rochester Housing Authority has already done their inspection, then the waiver will eliminate the need for you to go in the interior and take care of that inspection. Is there a time frame? Like now Section 8 is doing inspections every 2 years. So, you know, if we have an inspection that was done 2 years ago, will the city still accept that?
No, it's only 1 year.
Okay.
So then we would have to inspect that unit that Section 8 tenant is in.
Okay.
Okay, C of O exemptions. Let's see, so 1 or 2 family occupied by the owner or those owned operated by the housing authority are exempt from the C of O requirements. If you got an owner occupied or RHA owns the property, they're exempt. Owners whose parent, child, spouse, or sibling occupies 1 of the 2 family dwellings can apply for an exemption from the C of O requirement. In order to secure an exemption, the owner must submit a completed exemption form, provide proof of a related relationship, and proof of their occupancy. Once approved, the exemption must be renewed every 3 years. So now we get to 2 different types of C of Os, of conditionals and partials. Quickly, just kind of review, a condition is going to be based on a condition of why you're going to get the full C of O. And a partial will be based on just a specific area that will get a C of O. So when you're not able to obtain this full C of O because there's other issues that are going on in different areas, this is where you'll apply for one of these 2, and we'll go over which is which and when you would apply for each one. So we'll go over the areas for the conditional. The inspected area of the permit or the dwelling in the renewable C of O is near substantial compliance with all applicable codes. The work required to bring the building into full compliance is not necessary to make the building habitable. The space complies with zoning code. The present respective owner has submitted a conditional C of O application listing the work to be completed, dates of completion, and the required fee has been paid. All health and safety violations have been abated in the units to be occupied. All required fire and smoke detection and fire protection equipment and all means of egress are in compliance. So if you have a property where you would like a conditional C of O, you have to meet all of these criteria, and different examples of a conditional C of O possibly may be that you're not able to paint the exterior of the house because of the weather, or you may not have been able to get certain material for, say, the exterior to finish the outside of the property where everything else inside is in compliance. And you provide us that documentation kind of stating that, or it's obvious because of the weather and you're not able to finish something with conditional. So any questions on conditionals? We do get a lot of different questions on conditional C of Os and what conditions and what will constitute a condition, what won't, you know.
What happens if you have a tenant in place that has less than stellar housekeeping skills, like a hoarder situation or something like that? How does the city handle inspecting a unit where you really can't even see the walls in some cases?
Well, it depends on what we're getting in there and whether it's good. We would cite them for poor housekeeping, depending on if it's really health and safety or not. I mean, you get hoarders of different varieties. I've been
Right.
in places where a hoarder may have the most beautiful stuff you've seen and just antiques, and it's kind of a path to get around, and they have a lot of different nice items, and it's a kind of a different situation as into the hoarder mentality that we see, that it's very unsafe. So there could be rotten food and other hazards going on where those will have to be corrected. Certainly the inspectors will be able to have those conversations, and a lot of times the inspector can kind of be that middle person to say, hey, look, you have this, there's a condition based on what you have here. You have to make sure that that's got to get cleaned up due to your health. We want you to stay safe and have a safe place to stay. So please, make sure you're cleaning up areas, because it is a violation of the poor housekeeping, and possibly if there was an immediate hazard, we would cite support. So our inspectors are very versed in those different areas where they will certainly tell a tenant and say, hey, listen, you have to do this because of the safety concern that we have because of it.
So when you say cited for poor housekeeping, hoarders, they tend to live like that forever, and any citations really don't make any difference to them because that's just their way of life. But what happens if they don't comply? If the tenant doesn't comply, how does the landlord or the owner of the property remove that citation when they can't throw a tenant out of the place, because of COVID and whatever's going on here? Their hands are kind of tied.
Your hands are tied and ours are kind of tied too, because it's not like if you have a violation, that violation has to get corrected in order to obtain that C of O. And in a condition of poor housekeeping, or if you have an extreme hoarding position, is not going to give you the opportunity to apply for a conditional C of O. It's not a condition that we're going to accept for an application.
Okay.
Application will get denied, or you just won't get it granted if we did take it in. So it's not going to be a condition that's going to work for a conditional C of O application. It does have to get corrected. How you guys necessarily work that out is between you and that tenant. We most certainly try to step in when needed, and we have stepped in with different areas with different agencies that have came in. We have seen extreme hoarding situations in the city of Rochester. And, each one is treated a little bit different, to be honest. It's not just a cut and dry thing. There's a lot of gray area. Those, there's mental issues a lot of times, and other times it's a simple conversation that's had during the tenant, and we're just stressing, hey, you do this, do that, and it's for your best interest. And a lot of times we do get that compliance very good with the inspector and the tenant. Our inspectors are great at having these conversations and expressing to them why this has been done and what they can do, and kind of guiding them in that right direction. And sometimes the message comes over from the inspector than it does the landlord. I mean, we're here to protect kind of everyone's interest in the middle.
Okay.
So we'll go on to partial C of Os. And a partial C of O is just that. We're talking about a portion of the property that it will get a C of O. This is very common in our major building permits, where we will have a floor that they want us to get a C of O based on that floor, and they have many floors that are being renovated, but they want to move people in and kind of get the ball rolling on getting folks in there and kind of get some income based on big permits. You may have a large building permit where you got, in essence, we kind of call them a mother permit, where you have the whole building on there, but then you get to the point and you say, hey, we want to start occupying the 7th floor or 6th floor or that west wing over there, and this is the process you go through. You apply for the partial C of O, and this is under a building permit situation where you have a large building permit, and not with just a initial renewal on a C of O. This is based on building permits. So the portion of the building to be occupied is in substantial compliance with all applicable codes. The portion of the building to be occupied is compliance with zoning code. The partial occupancy will not endanger life, safety of the public, health, or welfare. The partial C of O application has been submitted, and the fee has been paid. A lot of times with this, we will go right into speaking with our fire marshals who are on a job. We always want to confirm with them that everything that is okay for that portion. The electrical inspectors and the plumbing inspectors, and possibly any third-party inspectors with structural and other type of inspections have been completed as well. So with the building permit process, it's all case by case and permit by permit of where these different buildings are and whether they can or cannot apply for a partial, or if they're just not ready. Definitely want to make sure that those means of egress are there, and all the fire-related activity is completed. So this is pretty kind of short here, but the list is actually very long when it gets down to fire safety, and that could include the elevators, it could include the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system, if applicable. I mean, you kind of name all the different systems that will be part of that portion of that building, and that's what's going to trigger that stuff.
Okay, I know we're running short on time here. We got about 15 minutes left, and I know a lot of people on the call are tuning in because they probably have some pretty specific questions about C of Os.
Sure.
Do you mind if we just open that up? And
yeah, we can put up the questions. All this stuff can be found on the city's website. And
great. Yeah, and if you don't mind sending me these documents, I'll make sure to send them out to everybody who's on the call. So if we did miss anything, we can catch up on it.
Yeah, I could send you the full link to the whole city.
Great. Perfect. So who wants to go first? I'm sure somebody's working on a C of O or has a transaction that a C of O is got a big part in. Fire away with your questions and let's get them answered. No one? All right. Well, then I got questions. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody else does. Hold on. Go ahead. Nope, I guess not. All right. C of Os, why is it that two-family C of Os are not transferable to a new owner if they're older than 2 years? Do you know the answer to that?
That's just the portion that was in the charter forever. It's really to make sure that they're being maintained. If if we're not in a unit in a within that last year, or you don't have that transferable status on a C of O, we're really in essence protecting the buyer. I mean, so many things happen in between a year that can jeopardize a C of O and issues. We all know somebody can get in, they can break some stuff, and then you're using that C of O. Say you got a 3-year and you want to transfer it in that third year. The stuff that happens within a year it can be immense. I mean, you may have major issues fairly quickly. So, it's being accurate. We're being accurate with the transferable C of Os. That you're hopefully getting. When you're getting a transferable C of O, it is indeed a good C of O and in good standing.
So the application process for a transferable C of O and the inspection, is it a full-on C of O inspection, just like you would be applying for one originally?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a transferable C of O. It is a C of O. So when you apply for another C of O before that, you're going to get a full C of O again. So that C of O will be extended to the time of the regular expiration that your new C of O is. You'll get a fresh new C of O.
So there's no such thing as a transfer C of O. It's a brand new C of O beginning from whatever that date is.
Yeah, transfer, what I'd say, what the status of the C of O is within that first year.
And is there a reason why it's just two families that are not transferable for the life of the C of O? Because you have the same things break down on single families, 3 and 4 families over a couple of years too. I'm not asking the city to start making all C of Os, untransferable for over 2 years, but
I believe it's both single and it applies to both. It's not just 2 families.
So, so a single family you're saying is not transferable if it's older than 2 years?
No, I think it is transferable.
Okay, yeah, so just the 2 families, the duplexes are the only ones that, to my knowledge, are not transferable if it's older than 2 years, correct?
The transferable C of O should be the same for both. So it's not, it's just after that year. So I'd have to look at it again a little bit closely. That was my understanding, but we could actually go back and actually read that transferable C of O. I can get that for you to see how the language is actually written.
We do have a question in the chat. If a property's been vacant, say the property's been vacant for 7 months, and it had a C of O on it, has an existing C of O on it, is there any, before a tenant can move in again, is there anything stating that C of O is no longer valid because it was vacant for a period of time?
Yes, after 60 days, it's voided, and then it's in need for a new C of O.
Okay, so does that pertain to all properties, single through 4 families and up?
They're
If it's vacant?
part of residential properties.
Okay.
Not commercial, straight commercial.
Okay. Okay.
And then it also can get into rights, losing rights on a property because it was vacant for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You guys get that a lot, where you think you're selling a 3-family, but because it's been vacant, it lost its rights, and now it has to be back down to the original use, or a 2-family, or possibly a 1-family, and those kind of are a case-by-case basis to see. But that's another one I kind of think that you may transition into the question of what if I lose my rights when it's vacant. It's the same as when you lose that C of O, you can lose those rights.
Can you mail in your C of O application or do it online now, or do you still have to go to, okay.
You sure can.
Okay. And then when you have all your repairs done and you call for a reinspection, what's the approximate wait time between call and final inspection?
Well, I think it'll go based on area to area and different inspectors, based on their workload and scheduling that they have. I'd say a definitive timeline that you're definitely going to be able to get a COO in a week, because you possibly may have to wait a little longer. But you're getting them fairly quickly for these re-inspections, and possibly we can do the virtual re-inspections as well.
Okay.
Necessarily have to go in, and that also is a big time saver.
Yeah.
Tell anyone who has a question on that type of stuff and has a re-inspection to call that inspector directly. The inspector will call you back. Pictures can be used a lot of times, especially if the inspector is intimately involved with those cases and know them very well. They know exactly where those areas are. If I was in a property 4 months ago or something, I may know the ins and outs of that one pretty well and be able to accept pictures and video, or just as simple as we're kind of doing a Zoom call here. You could do a Zoom call through the virtual inspection as well. But they reach out to your inspector and get those scheduled, and they'll be able to say it. But if you do it a virtual inspection and you got bad connection, or there's a bad picture, or it just doesn't suffice and you're not comfortable abating those through it, then an in-person inspection has to be scheduled.
Okay.
Hey, Dan, quick question. What constitutes a vacancy? And the reason why I asked this, I got a situation right now where a tenant's incarcerated, and so they were not allowed to go into their apartment. VA's actually still paying the rent, but that person's gone and not going to be back for a while. And also with COVID today, suppose somebody's hospitalized for a long period of time, or sometimes we've had just tenants go missing, but their stuff is still there, everything. So what constitutes a vacancy?
Well, a vacancy, that's a good question. I mean, if it's occupied in a sense, I'm renting it, maybe we don't intimately know whether you're in and out or somebody else is in and out, and it is being rented, and it's truly occupied in the sense that you have a tenant who's there or not. We're not going to cite it vacant unless we're certain. I mean, if you don't have electricity, you don't have water, there's other issues like that, then it triggers to say, yeah, this is vacant, or it's being occupied without the needs that you have. So it's a little bit touchy to say if somebody's still paying rents and they're still have their stuff there, maybe they are truly not there, or maybe someone actually is in the place. I mean, it's not really to say it's definitely vacant, because a landlord or an owner can say, yeah, it's vacant, but in reality, somebody else is kind of going in. I mean, unless you're really there. It's a tough one to hit on that nail on the head and actually say it's definitely vacant when you have all those telltale signs. The rent's being paid, they have their furniture there. But we're not there at night. Maybe there's somebody else going in. There's usage on the electric usage on the water when we were looking up. We're going to say it's occupied because it looks to be occupied. We're going to say that we're going to go with that it's occupied.
Thank you.
How about the life of a C of O? I know I don't know, but it seems that some are good for 5 years, some are good for 6 years.
So now we have 3 and 6.
Okay.
So there used to be the 5, but now we're on the 3 and 6.
So 3 is the ones with the waiver, and then 6 is the normal ones?
3 is going to be the ones with the waiver.
Okay.
And if you get a regular one, it's going to be 6. But then if you have the commercial use or the mixed uses, they're going to be 3. And if you have straight commercial use, until that use has changed or alterations are made, then it triggers a new C of O. So we have large straight commercial uses that have been the same use for the whole life of the property, and they're on that initial C of O. And then those inspections, those annual inspections, are done by the fire department when they go in. It's a little bit different with the major commercial properties that are not changing uses compared to our residential, where our renewal C of O process gets in there, and the C of Os do expire in the city of Rochester.
How do you lose your C of O while it's still valid? What constitutes revoking a C of O? I've listed properties where the city website shows that, you know, they had their C of O inspection 2 years ago. So you would assume that, you know, the C of O is good, but then get to closing to find out that it was somehow revoked. What makes it get revoked?
Yes, it's really definitely on a case-by-case status that it got revoked. In my time, I haven't had to revoke any C of Os, nor have I seen any of my cases necessarily be revoked and pulled away. If maybe they've obtained it somehow dishonestly, I'm not fluid with revoking those C of Os. I haven't revoked any C of Os, and I haven't personally seen anyone be revoked. You'd have to go on a case-by-case basis and look to see exactly why one was revoked.
If there's been a number of violations, like say you haven't done an interior inspection, but you've driven by and you see exterior violations all over the place, you know, just on a cursory, you happened upon the house. Is it possible that you can send a, you know, letter to the owner, and if they don't take care of it, would that revoke the C of O?
Say that again?
So you have a valid C of O on your property. And I'm saying this because I've got a lot of out-of-state owners. And so they feel like they're okay, everything's good, we've got a valid C of O. Well, somehow or another, the tenant's smashing up the outside of the house or something's going on. And I've had a situation where an inspector drove by, saw that the exterior, I don't know if the tenant maybe called it in, you know, to try and do whatever, but what I understand happened is the owner was cited for all these open case violations on the exterior of the property. And then he told me that his C of O was revoked because he didn't get somebody there in time. And again, some of my out-of-town owners have problems with property management, and their property manager says they've done something when they haven't, or they don't get around to doing it. But he told me that his C of O was revoked because of the exterior repairs being open case violations for too long.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a little bit of confusion on being revoked and having an open case. So if you have a valid C of O, and then that, you know, let's say you get a complaint and we go in and do a complaint inspection, we may open up a case and have health and safeties. You clear those health and safeties, you still have that same C of O, you just don't have an open case. So it's not necessarily if we're getting a complaint, we're revoking the C of O, we're opening a case and adding violations to it.
Okay.
If there's during a time period of this open complaint case is open and the C of O expires, then the violation of failure to obtain can be added, saying that you need a C of O. So there could be a little bit of confusion on different folks when they're under, hey, I had that C of O for, you know, it wasn't going to expire till April. And then we opened up a case in January and the case is still open. And then if April passes, and then they're getting cited for failure to obtain. It's not that we revoked the C of O, it's that it expired at that time. I think that's what people are, you're getting your C of O revoked when you have an open case on it.
Okay, yeah.
The fact that you're being revoked and you have to reapply for it, it's that you have an open case with violations on it, you know. And there's also situations where a case may be open and a violation may not be added and right off the bat, you know, a lot of times we just have to document different things that happen. If there was a fire referral and there's a case open and then we go and something was corrected or wasn't, then we'll close that case. You know, it won't stay open, nor will a violation necessarily always be added to a case.
And there is a list of things that the C of O inspection covers on your city website. I know I've seen that in the past. So if there's a landlord about to apply for a C of O, then they just go to that and check off the boxes.
Absolutely. They can use that as a checklist. They can go in and do a walkthrough, use that list to be prepared, do some prep before getting the initial C of O. It's all landlords to do that before an inspection, is to do that walkthrough and make sure that you got your smoke alarms and your carbon monoxide alarms, and make sure you don't have any interior deteriorated paint. It's very beneficial for a owner and a landlord to do the maintenance on their property that needs to get done all the time, to stay on top of the maintenance and making sure that if those windows and in between the storm window and the sash of the windows are painted. I mean, how many times an inspector walks in and they'll have a window open and they have to inspect that in between that storm window and the sash is there. They'll stick their head in the window and look up, and they have a good amount of peeling paint. And then we have to cite interior deteriorated paint, which then triggers the owner or responsible party to pay for a third-party lead test. When if the maintenance, just general maintenance, was done to it, that would alleviate that extra cost. So I would always recommend when an inspector calls to say, hey, are you ready for inspection? Can we get in? Sure that you did a walkthrough and you're seeing that. I've had numerous owners tell me, oh, Dan, don't let me in because I don't come in because I know I have peeling paint and I want to correct all the stuff. Absolutely. I don't want to have to cite you, and I don't have to cite a bunch of violations. We can definitely work with you and say, okay, how much time do you need? Give you the appropriate time that you need. And, we're not going to put it off for, months and months and months. But we can most certainly, you need a weekend, 2 weekends, you need, you possibly need a couple weeks to get ready. Sure. Or they may just tell you, hey, I got this and that. We'll put it in the notes. So anybody can see in those notes to say, oh, look, he canceled his appointment because he or she knew they needed to go through and make the sort of smoke alarms work, and that they want to do a quick visual and check the windows for interior paint because they had old wood sash windows.
You mentioned C of O detectors and smoke detectors. Can you tell me, is it a C of O, CO detector, C of O, CO detector on each floor, or, what's the regulation on that?
So if you have a older property that wasn't built after 2008, then your CO it's simple, but again, it's not the way the code reads for carbon monoxide detectors are. A carbon monoxide detector has to be within 15 feet of every sleeping quarter, which is a bedroom, on the lowest floor. So if you have two bedrooms on, let's say, the first floor, and they're more than 15 feet apart from each other, and you will need two carbon monoxide detectors within 15 feet of each one of those bedrooms on that floor. Most scenarios, in say an older colonial home or 1920s homes in the city, the bedrooms are upstairs, and the requirement can be sufficed for carbon monoxide by one carbon monoxide detector on that upstairs floor in that hallway, which is most common location for a carbon monoxide detector, within 15 feet of every bedroom on that lowest floor. There's also that when does a carbon monoxide detector have to be put up high or put down low? Carbon, if you have forced air unit, heating unit, then the circulation of air will make it possible that it can be detected up high or down low. But if you had a boiler or all radiant heat, you'd want that carbon monoxide detector lower. And again, it's still the same. You just want it within 15 feet of every bedroom on its lowest sleeping quarter. As for 1 and 2 family homes for smoke alarms, you do want one on every floor, including the basement. So you want one in the basement, and then you want one on the first floor, and then you want one on the second floor where they're all living areas. That is not going to be required to have it on those 1 and 2 stories that are older, where it's not hardwired or you don't have an already existing hardwired system. But then and the other part is you want one inside every bedroom and outside of every bedroom. So you want a smoke detector inside every bedroom and outside of every bedroom that's adjacent. So you may have a bedroom that has a hallway. That hallway needs a smoke detector, but then maybe that bedroom has a second entrance that's closer to another hallway where you'll need another smoke detector, another one. So when in doubt, you put one inside the bedroom and outside the bedroom. And, you ask these questions. A lot of times you can have them over the phone and make sure they work.
Mhm.
The manufacturer has a lot of where you can put them. You want to put a smoke alarm in the corner of a room because the smoke will not be detected. You really want it around 12 inches from the corner if you put it on the wall, or 12 inches away from the corner if you put them on the ceiling. You don't want to put them next to ceiling fans. There's, as simple as smoke alarms are, there's a lot to them. I have a whole hour class just on smoke alarms and different types and getting the commercial, and then fire protection systems. It changes with different uses. That's your basics for 1 to 2 family smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors.
Yeah, okay. Any further questions? Well, I guess not. Thank you so much for all the information you shared with us. And if you don't mind sending us those documents that you shared, I'd love to pass them out to everybody. We will, again, be making this recording available to anybody who wants to view it. I know there were a lot of people that hit me up and, definitely wanted to take part today, but schedules didn't allow. So a lot of interest. Would you mind, would it be okay to share your email or your phone number in case anybody has any further questions?
Sure.
Okay. And your email was danarena@cityofrochester.gov?
Daniel.arena,
Okay.
cityofrochester.gov.
And your phone number?
This is 585-428-7122.
122. Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I had a quick question. I'm sorry. I stepped away for the moment when you were talking about the loss of zoning. And I didn't want to waste anyone's time because I know you already covered it. But if we bought a property that was zoned as a duplex and it's been in the pipeline for work for a number of months, I think I heard you say you could lose the duplex status if it's been vacant. Can you go over that again? I'm sorry. This is a topic you've already covered, but I had to step out for just a moment. Thank
Yeah,
you.
what I could do is I could get that to be precise about the exact timing of how long a property has to be vacant to lose those rights. I don't want to give you an answer of exactly a timeline without actually getting in the writing on it. I could provide that as well. I believe it's that 60-day mark of being vacant that you can lose the rights if that was not the original build. We'll get that exact detail and where it is, so we can be 100% precise. I believe it's 60 days. It could be 90, but I'm pretty certain it's 60. But I'll get that in the city charter. That will be into the link of the E-codes 360 is what I'll send, and I'll make a note when I send that to you, Colleen, where exactly where that portion is of losing rights based on a vacancy.
So basically, if somebody had a ginormous home, it was built as a single family back in 1920, and then converted to a 3-family, for instance. If that goes vacant, then it could be rezoned back to its original use, or even maybe not original use, but say a 3-family down to a 2 if the city found it more beneficial, I guess, right?
And depending whether or not it's feasible to do that deconversion, where deconversion will have to be made. There are situations that we've seen where it's not, it may have been a mansion on East Avenue and, now it's a 10 family and it's not going to be too feasible to make it into a single family, nor do we want to make it impossible
Okay.
to be a viable property by any means. It does kind of go by case. Where some of those are pretty obvious immediately when they come in that yes, it was a single family, in the 20s, and now it's a 4 or 5 family where you're not going to necessarily lose those rights, but each one kind of goes case by case on those. We'll get the exact verbiage on how that is and what the timelines are on that, and they do end up going a little bit case by case. It's it's a lot of the ones that were converted to a 3 family and originally a 2 family, they have to get deconverted, or ones that were chopped up and there's a bunch of small units and then they have to get deconverted.
Okay. And one last question. Selling a 2-family that no longer has zoning as a 2-family. There's a kitchen on the 2nd floor. Remove the appliances, but they wanted to keep the sink and cabinets up there. Is that okay for a C of O for a single family to have, basically the kitchen without the appliances up there?
No, you can't just, so if you had a 2-family that was originally 2-family, you lost their rights and it had to be a 1-family, and you just disconnect the stove and a couple little things here and there where we walk out, and then later today you come back and you make it into a 2-family in 10 minutes, it's not going to fly. I definitely tell folks a lot of times is to utilize what they have and make that like a 2nd floor laundry.
Okay.
You can utilize that, and it's a great portion. I had a guy do that. I forgot what street it was, but he did that so easy, and he put a different setup in there where he didn't necessarily have to have that sink, and he different setup with the laundry going through the drainage like that, and it worked out good. And he was thankful that he didn't have to do anything. If he didn't want to go through that process, we do make it so that during the deconversion process where you are capping those pipes, you are completely disconnecting them. You're disconnecting them and most likely capping them inside the floor cavity, or you're pulling them out through the wall, and you're completely removing those. We don't want to make it necessarily an easy task to deconvert and then convert it right back as soon as we walk out the door.
Right.
We want it to be a permanent deconversion. We don't want it to come back right away and then someone does it. I do recommend people do that second floor laundry. It works.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You already have the gas. You already have the electric. You already got the plumbing. You have a couple cabinets up there that work great for that use. It's a great one. It's an easy transition too.
Okay, and we had one more question here. Somebody asked about the fees for a C of O. How much is it to apply for a C of O?
Well, I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't take in the.
No problem. If I remember right, I think it's different for each. Like a single family is one price, and I think 2 to 4 families was another price, if I remember correctly. But I know that information's on the website as well. There's also a very helpful chart on the City of Rochester website that I refer to quite often that breaks down, owner-occupied 2-family doesn't need a C of O, and it also, I think, if I remember correctly, also states the length of time that the C of O is valid for on that chart. So, actually somebody, a landlord of ours just said that it's $60 for a single and $80 for a multi. So actually not too crazy expensive in terms of how everything is this year, or, at this time, but yeah, good.
You got to think about the time. The inspector, you're getting an inspector in and out. And,
yeah, and getting a certificate that's going to, keep your property in good standing for quite some period of time. I know that when we're selling houses, if we're selling a house without a C of O, it definitely affects the value of the property. Whether you got tenants in there or paying good rent or whatever, if there's no C of O, that definitely has an impact on value. So C of Os are really important to investors, especially when you've got out of town investors buying in the city, because they have to hire people to do the work and make sure that somebody knows the process. And so very valuable to sell your house with a valid C of O.
Certainly.
All right. Well, it looks like that is everything. I don't see anybody else looking to speak. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I think everybody appreciates it. And like I said, we will make this available. I'll send a copy of the recording to you as well. And thank you for giving us your time. I hope
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, feel free to send questions my way. I will, as we get off this, I will forward you the COVID-19 policy, and I will forward you the E360, and I'll highlight on the vacancy that will trigger deconversion if needed for those properties.
Great. That's good. Yeah, definitely need to know that. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. And in a couple weeks, we'll have another Zoom call, topic to be determined. We're working on a couple speakers, but if anybody has any requests, let us know and we'll do our best to get your request honored.
All right.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
You got it.
Bye-bye.